be a light for you in dark places when all other lights go out.
Hello everyone, this is DCHL Devin here, and welcome to another how to play and how to buy video. And today we are going to be talking about Azog's Legion, which is a highly requested one for many of you. Ever since it came out, we've been really looking forward to seeing what they can do, and unfortunately we've been waiting on a lot of the models to come out. So far, as of the recording of this video, we still haven't seen the Gundabad Mercenaries, the Goblin Mercenaries, Troll Catapult, Signal Tower, and the Warbats. So I can say that I don't have a 100% fleshed out feel for the army, but what we did was proxy Warbats for Bat Swarms, proxy Goblin Town Goblins for the Mercenaries, and then we just used a Gundabad Troll for the Troll Catapult in order to get a feel of it. As far as the Signal Tower, I did have to consult people who did play test with that, and also I consulted with Damien O'Byrne from the GBHL podcast and owner of SBG Magazine, along with Tom Harrison. With him, he actually has a lot of experience with the Azog's Legion, as you guys might be well aware, especially in the UK scene. So with all of that, with everyone that I consulted with, I came up with this list of things for a good amount of tactics, pros, cons, and how to buy them cheaply. So let's go ahead and get right into it. With the pros, the first pro we're looking at is monster spamming, and that's because you get a lot of cheap monsters, most specifically with the ogres. The ogres are a healthy 60 points, which is the cheapest monster that we've seen to date. Not only though are they 60 points, but they're actually very viable. They have an excellent stat line, with their defense being their only real weakness at a defense of 5. This simply means that elven bows can tear them off the field. However, they do have 3 wounds and a movement speed of 8. With them being so cheap, you can easily afford multiples of them on the field. Now, the real reason this causes problems is not necessarily due to their hitting power, but their ability to hurl multiple times all throughout the battlefield. Not in one troll, mind you, but lots of trolls. When you have 3 or 4 ogres constantly tossing between battle lines and into each other's combats, where they can disrupt the combats that the next one is in, it can really cause a lot of significant problems for the opponent as they're trying to kill these things, but yet their entire army is frequently being knocked to the ground. These units are also very good against cav armies, which is great for this army considering the lack of cav in itself. And even with the monster spamming, you can actually get some big monsters in conjunction with these smaller ones. I have seen lists and play-tested lists where you have 2 Gundabad Trolls, 4 Ogres, and then just an assortment of Goblin Mercenaries. And with that many monsters on the field, it really causes a lot of havoc and problems. This is probably the first army we've seen that can do this, other than maybe Moria, but the cheapest model it has is at 80 points, and often it can't spam quite as well as this army, especially since their monsters move slower than the ones from this army. They're base monsters, not the dragons and drakes. So the next thing is, of course, and I'll touch lightly, is the variety of monsters. Now, this is a thing that also Moria shares, but it does have a plethora of monsters for a range of options. You have the Catapult Troll to give you that long-range firepower, yet still very confident in close combat. In fact, probably more powerful in close combat. Then you have the Troll Brutes that can easily disrupt lines, and the fact that many opponents want to move away from them since they not only can hurl, but they usually will use the Bard's Brutal Power Attack in order to cause Strength 10 impact hits all throughout the opponent's lines. So that's something that you'll see them do a lot. A lot of people try to avoid them. They can tend to split ranks up. The Gundabad Trolls themselves are just insanely tough to take down and have utility options among Scything Talons and Crushing Clubs that allow them to either kill heroes or wipe out hordes of infantry. And then, of course, the Gundabad Ogres. So there's a lot of variety this army has. You also have some of the strongest evil heroes in the game. I don't know any player that isn't afraid to see Bolg and Azog on the field. I mean, granted, of course, you could have a wizard or a wraith, and that will generally take care of your problem. However, with the plethora of ogres and Gundabad trolls that will generally be backing them up, it's often hard to pick which one to transfix. And once all Azog or Bolg is actually in your face, they cause a tremendous amount of damage. They're hard to take down. They're hard to outfight. They have as far as Azog is concerned, he's hard to outmight. They're very fast with their cav mounts, especially Azog, whom his mount is very difficult to take down even of itself. The list of special rules they have can give them something of free might, killing heroes on 3s. They're terrific. So you're generally going to see these in many Gundabad forces. because of how powerful they are, and easily in close combat some of the strongest heroes in the game. Next we have, they are a fast infantry force. Now, this army doesn't have really cav to speak of. However, it does have ogres, bats, and berserkers moving at a pace of 8 or 12 inches. Now, this makes this army actually pretty flexible within speed. The ogres, being a fast-moving monster, is quite scary, especially when spammed. And then the Gundabad berserkers have a nice smaller infantry base, which, guys, they are supposed to be on a 25 mil base. I know that sometimes causes confusion that they have 30 mil bases occasionally, but it should be a 25 mil. And with that, they get the flexibility of moving around battle lines, but at an 8-inch pace. And of course, bats, which is the first spammable flying unit that we are seeing. You can generally have 4 of these and not feel too much like you've spent too many points on them, and they can cause a lot of disruption. Flying models in this game causes problems. A lot of people don't know how to set up against them, and they are able to trap models very easily. And of course, they have some nifty special rules of their own that are anti-armor. So after that, you have the Master of Battle mechanic. This is a faction special rule that the Azog's Legion gets that is probably one of the better ones available as of the filming of this video. The best part about it is it doesn't even need to go into Azog. It actually is on any of your army leader, so it gives you the ability to copy heroic actions for free within 6 inches. And it's amazing. I mean, that ability cannot be understated. It is one of the few faction bonuses that really make you think twice about allying into another force to get either magic or any of the other things that make this army weak. It is a fantastic bonus. Next, we have flexibility, and this is basically the fact that you get to use an elite heavy force where you can use berserkers as a main core and then have it filled up with monsters, or you can actually spam out with goblins. It's actually quite surprising to see goblins in this army, unless you've seen the movie, in which case you see there is a little scene with goblin mercenaries showing up, and they're very minor, but you could tell that the Middle-earth team probably wouldn't have put them in this force had it not been for the movie kind of deciding their hand. But they are in there, which means that they get some goblins to move around the field as far as a horde army and then use the monsters. So they kind of actually have a similar feel to Moria in that sense. So let's go ahead and get into the cons of this force. The number one, probably the biggest notable one, if you decide to stay pure especially, you have no magic. So no magic actually gives you a hell of a disadvantage, especially in this meta. As of the filming of this video, magic does help you win games quite often, and unfortunately magic is useful to help stop magic, and magic really hurts Bolg and Azog. So in their case, you're going to have to use trolls or berserkers in order to create alternate threats so that Azog and Bolg remain transfix free, or the rest of your Gundabad trolls. The next thing we have is no shooting. This army has to go to your opponent. Now, technically, they have the troll Catapult, and we play tested with it a couple times, not really knowing its actual base size, but you know, we used a Gundabad troll as sort of a safe bet, and the troll Catapult actually does do some damage. The fact that it can continuously fire and yet keep your army mobile is an excellent addition to this force. But large in all, you have no shooting to this force, and so often, unless you pay that 180 point price tag for the troll Catapult, the enemy is going to be waiting for you to come to them. You will often be shot up, and this means the third weakness of this army, no anti-shooting. This army has a lot of Defense 5 units. I mean, yes, you do have a Defense 6 core, which is your Gundabad warriors, but the trolls generally can survive shooting pretty well with a healthy Defense 8. But after that, shooting will hurt you. Even the troll brutes are weak to crossbows, and everything else, I mean, at Defense 5 of mainly across their entire army, they're going to go down and shooting pretty fast. You must move fast on your feet, and this is where using heroic marches can help you out quite a bit. You'll actually note that even the signal tower for Azog gives you free heroic marches, which is great for dealing with this no anti-shooting problem. Though we'll get into the signal tower in a bit. So next you have no cavalry. This is not as big a deal, mostly because you have some fast-moving infantry forces, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. And then you have pretty bad basic infantry. So with this, I'm actually referring to the Gundabad warriors themselves. They're just not good troops. I mean, Fight 3, Courage 3 is not winning you a game. You will rely on your monsters and on your leadership. And it's pretty stated how I've tried them quite a few times, and they generally get torn up in games, even with Defense 6. You know, you definitely want to arm them up with shields, but with that said, they're not going to kill much, and they're not going to kill very fast. It's actually often said that the Goblin Mercenaries might even be a better option. I have tested with both, and I personally prefer the Goblin Mercenaries. So let's go into the tactics of this army. How would we use them? So the first thing is to go pure or not pure. That's kind of the biggest question, mostly because you lose Master of Battle if you don't go pure. It is that much of a decision. Master of Battle is that helpful, where you really need to decide. Personally, I think if you want to go competitive, you will probably have to sacrifice the Master of Battle and make sure you have enough might on the field in order to get that magic and shooting element into the army. But going pure is, of course, the way for a lot more fun players. I don't think personally, and I think Damien O'Byrne even agrees with this during our discussion, that a pure Azog's Legion will struggle to win tournaments. So next you have Bolg versus Azog. When you're picking your army, which one do you choose? Often we considered that Bolg is better probably at the lower point, 600 and below point games, and Azog at the upper point games. The reason why is because Azog is clearly a better hero. He is stronger than Bolg, and will often use his special rules a little more often. But generally, when you're looking at the choice between Azog and Bolg, you're actually looking at the choice between Azog and a Bolg and an Ogre. It's due to the, normally you kit Azog with everything other than the Signal Tower. So it's a 60-point difference, and that's what you're really getting with the other two. So in a smaller point game, it is often better to pick Bolg because he can team up with an Ogre, and that way when Bolg is getting transfixed, most likely getting transfixed anyway, the Ogre can wrap around and start trying to do hurl mechanics and stuff to get to that wizard. And it just gives you multiple threats. Azog, though, at higher point games, of course. And so let's look into Azog. One reason we like him better is because, one, he has a ton of might, especially on the White Warg. So obviously only 3 normally, but everyone puts him on the White Warg, and I highly recommend you do so. So his flail is overly powerful, and so for 10 points, you're getting an absolute steal of a weapon. Though, admittedly, if you're going to use the flail, the best part is that he has a sword in his other hand, which means he always keeps it. And this means that you can choose which one you want to use, even when you buy the flail. At models at fight 6 and above, I would highly consider not using the flail in order to not be outfought, especially against heroes who can heroic strike as well. But if you're fighting a monster, then the flail is an automatic use. I absolutely say you should use it. Use the might to win the fight, and then just watch the thing go down. Of course, if you're fighting heroes without might, that changes things a little bit, and then you can kill them pretty outright as well. He has a reliable mount. It can't be shot out from underneath him by a cheeky Legolas or anything like that. Maybe a hurl or something like that, but it is very difficult to get him dismounted. And so he's easily the better choice if you're going to weigh the two options. Bolg, one of the reasons we don't pick him as much, one, he's easily dismounted, obviously by Legolas or hurling and stuff like that, which means he rarely gets that 10 kills that you're really looking for him to get. The theory is, of course, that you will do a heroic combat in the first combat, kill 2 models, then kill 2 more. Second combat, kill 2 models, heroic combat, kill 2 more, and then the third combat, kill 2 more models. And this is great in theory, but very rarely do the actual 10 kills come into play. I know I've never actually gotten to 10 kills, except in a prolonged out game. And Damien, who has a lot of experience with the Force, says he rarely gets it. And even when he does get to it, generally the game is already over by that point, and it's already pretty much decided who's going to win. So it never really makes a serious impact. So with that, you really should rely more on the Harbinger of Evil and Terror that he's going to get, rather than the Master of Battle. So with that in mind, we now think about, what about neither? Is picking none of Azog or Bolg a good option? And I would actually say yes. The thing is, the captains allow you to spam monsters. And so instead of a single big hero with maybe a few monsters, you now have like 6 monsters with lots of goblins and then captains to lead them on. And then you still get Master of Battle to offset that might difference that you would have between you and your opponent. So it is a viable option just to take captains, and you might even find it even more competitive in a lot of ways. So another big question in tactics is, which monster do you want to use? Well, ogres are often the most popular choice due to their cheap cost and their speed, and the fact that, yeah, since they're cheap costs, you can spam them all over the place. So you often find most Gundabad forces will have an ogre thrown in there. The next one after that, and this list is according to Damien, he has a lot more experience with the monsters than I do, but he found that the Crushing Club is best. It is the most useful between the two of the Scything and the Crushing Club. In theory, he states that you would, the 2+ to wound would make him a great infantry killer, but often with 3 to wound on most targets anyway. Keep in mind the Troll Brute is a strength, I believe, 8, but even if it's 7, most things will die on a 3, and so oftentimes he's killing them pretty fast anyway. It rarely comes into play, and the more important note is you're often using brutal power attacks anyway. So the Scything Talons never even get used. So the Crushing Club, though, the fact that the troll can kill other trolls in a single swing with a Crushing Club and then really threatens heroes is the real key to that winning. So I would say if you're going to make a choice between the Crushing Club and the Scything Claw, I forget, Scything Swords or something, but pick the Crushing Club. So next best to use is often the Troll Brute, and this is actually above the Scything Gauntlets that, according to Damien as well. The Brute is basically just a ton of fun, so I guess that's one of the biggest reasons. However, I will say that from my personal experience, a Fight 4, Defend 6 monster, even with 4 wounds, definitely goes down very fast. I brought this thing down with a Hyorikai Shaman at one point at Articon, and it can definitely be taken out pretty fast. But a lot of people will fear the impact hits, the strength 10 impact hits, and when you're in combat with them, definitely make sure to barge, and then go ahead and move around and start doing even more strength 10 impact hits. You're often going to find that does the most damage. So lastly, we have the infantry. Which infantry is better? And as you heard me say earlier, I do think the mercenaries are better. Yes, the mercenaries are technically weaker, but you should use them in order to spam out more of the monsters and allow you to get that flexibility of numbers while still picking Azog or Bolg and then the monster core that you need. Now, this is not to say you don't want to pick any Gundabads. The Gundabads have shields, which give you shielding options, which is very important, and then spears, which is probably the ultimate importance. Now, this may frustrate a lot of older players, but these spears can spear support, as of the recording of this video anyway, they can spear support monsters. And what that means is that you should have one for every single monster that you have, plus about an extra 4. The extra 4 just to either re-support the monsters in case one gets out of place or killed, and maybe go grab an objective, and therefore they can't be killed by shooting too easily because they'll need a 6 to wound. So I would say bring some Gundabad warriors with some spears, give your monster that 4th attack they need to win the fight, and then there you go. And of course you can even throw in a banner, which only the Gundabad warriors have, and then give those monsters that extra boost to win their combats, because once they do, those hurls become just fantastic. So let's go ahead and get into the how to buy in this force. As far as the how to buy, oh, I'm sorry, before I go into the how to buy, one more thing. A lot of you guys are very curious about the signal tower and the bats. So as far as the signal tower, I did talk to Matthew Iverson, the winner of last year's Nova, and he does use the Azog's Legion army. The signal tower has often been known not to be very competitive at all. Unfortunately, if you spam out your infantry, you take Azog, a full core of 24 infantry, and then the signal tower, generally in a 700-point game. This does not work. We've tried it out. It really does not work. However, Matt does swear that one that is potentially very competitive is a signal tower, Azog, and then like 17 berserkers. Just spam out berserkers. Now, the reason for this is because with the heroic march that you get, you actually can move the berserkers at an 11-inch pace because they already move 8 inches plus 3. And 11 inches can outpace even cavalry. Then with the little lieutenants, you actually have a huge cache of might. You actually have 7 points of might plus Azog 6. So you're healthy on might because you're getting 7 lieutenants with the tower. And on top of that, the berserkers are going to a 5-up fury save, just built-in ability. They have this where they can save their fury. And they get +1 courage, which means they auto-pass all tests for fearless. I mean, not that they were failing anyway before, but now they really do. And so they move fast, they're highly resilient, and they're banner bonused now. So now each one of them has 3 attacks to win the fight. When you really have that much, it's theorized that, you know, you can move around the opponent, you dictate the battle as needed, and then you have Master of Battle to counter any heroics. You'll really wear your opponent down. So this is something I encourage you guys to try, is to try the signal tower with a load of berserkers rather than a load of regular Gundabads. If you want, you can also try it out with Goblin Mercenaries. You can spam out quite a bit more of those, especially since Azog gets a 24-man warband. And then they will have the spear supports of themselves, and then the banner bonus on top of that. And a 6-up save is not bad, and then the heroic marches allow you to kind of, it mitigates the slow speed of the goblins. So both of those I would say is the way you'd use a tower. And then as far as the bats, I would bring a couple, usually just to either disrupt battle lines, or of course you can grab things in the background. Generally, if people have a wizard, they will kind of guard them, surround them by units, so you may not get to them too easily. But what you can do is use the bats to hit the back ranks of whatever it is you engage to ensure that they get trapped. And generally you can crush a flank this way. So let's get into the how to buy, since I've already talked long enough on the tactics. So with this army, it is very expensive. It is one of those Forge World armies, with your average core of troops being the Gundabad warriors. They're going to be $65 for 12, and I expect the Goblin mercenaries to be the same, given that they're the same material. The trolls, of course, are not cheap, and the only thing cheap in your army are the heroes themselves, which means you're going to have to do some adjustment. Now, as a quick note, for those of you who want to stay under $100, you're going to have to get the Urukai. Otherwise, you can't do this army. You have to use Urukai and then proxy them as Gundabads. They look close enough. However, for those of you purists, I'm going to show you what I would do if I were to spend another $100. We're going to have to upgrade this because it's coming about that time. We have too many armies that are breaching that $100 limit. So let's see what we can do for under $200, which is not a bad way to start an army. So the way I personally would do it is I would pick Azog for $40. And by the way, guys, I'm American, so I will be speaking in dollars. But I would do Azog for $40, a Gundabad pack for $65, and then I would buy one Ogre, which is 28 pounds, and then 6 Berserkers, which is another 44 pounds. Now, as of the filming this video, the dollar is about $1.30 equals a pound. So that means that the Ogre and the Berserkers, the 6 Berserkers, will be $100. So if you add that up, it's $205. And that's about where I would start. I'd say that you can paint one of the Gundabads to be a little bit different than the others, and then maybe later on use a conversion pack to get him like kind of up to speed to looking like a captain. But until then, just paint him different, make him a captain model, and then there you have 6 Berserkers, an Ogre as another threat, Azog, and then your core troops. The reason I like this as a starting lineup is because I can't imagine too many ways you would make this army without fielding these troops. Especially at higher point games, which is what everyone's kind of leaning toward. This is generally what you're always going to play with. Even if you throw out Azog, you're almost always going to play with those troops. So you can't go wrong really with that direction. So, whereas if you buy a troll, you may want to field an army without a giant troll, the Gundabad trolls or something like that. So I would start with that, and that's how I begin it. Alright guys, well let me know what army you want me to review next, and we'll go ahead and get it in as fast as possible. We have the new rules coming up hopefully very soon, I think projected for some time this year. And of course then I'll have to start all of this over again depending on what armies have changed. So I guess we'll go ahead and move through what's left, and I will see you all very soon.